Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first edition of Cream City Cast U. This is CreamCityCentral.com's weekly podcast discussing the latest takes and opinions for your favorite Wisconsin colleges. And this is brought to you by the Shepherd Express out of Milwaukee. You can check them out at shepherdexpress.com. I'm joined by Cream City Central's basketball editor, Alexander Juno. Thanks for joining me, Al. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. It's happy to be here. I'm happy that basketball season is in full swing and we got all the teams going.
Absolutely. Bucks are doing good. Badgers doing all right. Marquette rebuilding, but we'll get through it. I guess in this first episode, we're going to be focused a lot and mostly on Wisconsin, the men's basketball team. They're off to a pretty good start, going 2-1, losing yesterday in their first big road in their home test against number 15 Xavier. They lost by 10, 80-70. Ethan Happ played really well with 21 and 8, and Brevin Pritzel had a pretty decent game with 13 points and 4 rebounds. So it was a pretty good performance at the end, and they really stuck with it. Probably it's a more senior ridden team in Xavier, so they have a lot more experience, and they wanted to revenge that Sweet 16 loss where Bronson Kading hit that big shot in 15-16. So I guess we're just going to start the discussion a little bit about that game, and since it's the first real game for the Badgers. So, Al, what'd you think about it?
I thought the Badgers played well. I actually thought they were going to win that game for most of the game and before the game. Uh, a little disappointed in some of the performances, but as you said, it's a really young team, and we shouldn't really be expecting them to beat the big games. Maybe my expectations were a little bit higher than they should have been. Uh, Xavier's a really good team. They have a lot of really good players. They have guys who were all Big East last year that are coming back. So I don't think there's any shame into losing to that team when you're really integrating a full new rotation.
No, definitely. And Xavier played really well. They were led by their seniors. Trayvon Blewett hit two really big 3-pointers with under 2 minutes to go in the game, which kind of sealed the deal for Xavier. But I think you could really tell that other than Ethan Happ, this was the first big game that most of these Badgers have played in. I mean, I know Dimitri Trice played sparingly in the tournament last season, but I was very impressed to see Brevin Pritzel played well in only 16 minutes, was the second leading scorer. I think Brad Davison, I was surprised actually about the leash that Greg Gard gave him. He was out there for a lot of key minutes. And I think Aleem Ford actually showed a lot of potential out there. He hit 2 threes, something that he wasn't really known for coming in, but coming off of his redshirt season, I think he really developed that part of his game. Who do you think, Al, was probably let's get the top three players on Wisconsin. Who do you think?
So far this season or in yesterday's game?
Let's go with yesterday's game.
You gotta go Ethan Happ number one. I think Brad Davison would probably have to be my number two. Uh, I don't know exactly how many steals he had. He was credited with 4 steals, so nobody else on the Badgers had more than one. He really just got into passing lanes in addition to being aggressive on offense. I thought he was feeling it a little too much in the second half with some of the shots he tried to force, but like those are freshman errors. Everybody's really hyping him up with how much tenacity he's playing with. And I think third would probably have to be Brevin Pritzel. I thought Pritzel got out to kind of a slow start, even though he scored, I think, 5 of the Badgers' first 7. He gave up a couple of points to Makura that I think he could have covered a little better. He's such a good shooter, though, and when you get to play with a big man like Ethan Happ, you're going to get a lot of open looks.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I mean, I'd say Ethan Happ. I mean, I don't know all of the big men in college basketball, but I mean, for as far as I can see, he is probably maybe the top 5 passing big men in college basketball. I mean, because he just draws so much attention in the Badgers offense, and whether he gets it in the high post or the low post. And that's why Wisconsin's style is so good, and it fits Ethan Happ so well because you got athletes all around him cutting to the rim. Brevin Pritzel made a couple big plays. I mean, I think that this is a really good step for Wisconsin, getting a test this early and kind of putting the barometer at where they need to be. And, they got outscored 46-36, and giving up 80 points isn't necessarily Wisconsin basketball. So you have to expect the defense is going to get a little bit better. But I think it was a good barometer so far. And I think the minutes were pretty telling of what Greg Gard's trust level is with these people. Because, Van Vliet, he's played 11 minutes, he started. Pritzl played 16 minutes, he started. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what the rotations are going to be. Because and then off the bench, Aleem Ford had 29 and Brad Davidson had 28. So do you think that this is going to be a consistent rotation for them?
I don't know. It's really tough to tell. It's very rare for a college team to play starters, 16 and 11 minutes and then have two guys over 25 off the bench. But those guys off the bench are a little bit younger, and Wisconsin's really a program that's kind of always been seniors get the time, upperclassmen get the time. I was asking my parents yesterday, when's the last time Wisconsin made a change to their starting lineup midway through the season that wasn't injury related? And I couldn't think of a time, and I wonder if that's something we might see this season if, it's just one game, and Van Vliet and Pritzl have played well in the other two games, but when you start playing Power 6, Power 5 teams, that's what really matters. And if you can't show up in those games, we don't really know what's going to happen.
You're right. But I also wonder if they're looking a little bit towards next year also, because Davison, Kobe King, Aleem Ford, they're going to have to have bigger roles next year for sure, because they're getting better. You can see the potential in them.
I don't necessarily know that those roles are going to be there, though. The only senior on this team is Aaron Maish, I believe, and at least the only senior on scholarship.
That's true. But I do think that, it's tough, and Greg Gard's kind of put himself in a situation here with Pritzl and Andy Van Vliet because, do you think next year that Davison and Aleem Ford will be better than them and more suited to be starters?
It probably depends where we end this season. I'm not sure.
That's true.
I'm not sure where we're at right now. I'm not sure if in a week we won't be saying Davison should be starting over Pritzl. Pritzl seems like a guy who could be really hit and miss, and maybe he's a guy you'd want coming off your bench more, where Davison could kind of be a tone setter among the starters with defensive intensity and stuff like that. But, it's a really, really young season, but I think it's interesting that we're going to be able to have these type of conversations because the last few years, it's been so straightforward who the best players on the Badgers are and what the hierarchy is.
No, for sure. And I think Davison, like you said he had 4 steals, but his defensive intensity is something that I think Wisconsin needs, to be quite frank with you, giving up 80 points. And not saying that Pritzl and Trice can't defend really, but you can see that Davison's truly an elite defender already as a freshman.
Yeah. I think one other thing I would note about yesterday's game was that the Badgers were able to somehow put together a 9-0 run without Happ on the floor. That's going to be key this year. If we want Ethan Happ to be under 35 minutes a game, we're going to need to be able to survive against good opponents without him on the court. And, I think it really comes down. I think they'll be able to defend without him. I don't think that's the problem. I think they need to find ways to score without him that aren't taking contested jumpers, and we'll see if they're able to do that.
Yeah, and they have another test coming up against number 25 Baylor next week. So, little time to recoup and regather. I think they're just going to have to roll with what they're going with. Because Baylor, I know they lost a couple of key guys last year of the draft, but they're a good program and they play hard for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's move on to best player. It's kind of been cut and dry that Ethan Happ's the guy on this team, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think his experience really showed yesterday and in the other games. I understand they weren't against the greatest opponents, but you've actually, I think, seen even more progression in his game, which is kind of exciting about it. He's seeing the floor a lot better. I mean, he attempted a three yesterday. Like, what's going on with that? He's dribbling a little bit more. Like when against I forgot who they played second, but you saw him get a rebound and dribble it all the way down the court, and that's exciting because it just gives the Badgers another thing that opponents aren't ready for, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a key thing. I think the passing is really key. Last year, we saw him kind of struggle when he got double and triple teamed to get the passes out of there. And now he seems to be really aware of where he is on the court and where everybody else is and kind of finding which way to go with the kick out. And I even saw him yesterday a couple of times take an extra dribble, take an extra step to really sink that defender down and get the shooters like Pritzl and Trice an extra step. That kind of stuff is invaluable from the best player on your team. You need him to do those little things and really put everybody else in a position to succeed.
Absolutely. And as the leader of this team, I mean, he's going to have to do that because you do have shooters around him. I mean, Pritzl, Trice can shoot it a little bit, but when Iverson's on the court, Aleem Ford, you need them to be cutting and using their athleticism to contribute offensively, in my mind. And that's where, Hap makes everyone better. And, Hap is the easy option for best player so far. So we're gonna test you a little bit here. Who do you think would be the second best player?
That's honestly a really tough one. Khalil played incredibly well against Yale. I think he's going to have some matchups where he feasts. He's a really good athlete, but we have to see if he can kind of bring those handles out consistently and really use his athleticism. I think he would be an option, but I think D'Mitrik Trice is the guy. We've talked a lot about in our group chats and stuff like that about the history of the Badgers point guard position. I know we have a piece on our site about kind of just how good they've been there for so long. When you look at guys like Jordan Taylor, Trayvon Jackson, Bronson Koenig, and before him, Devin Harris. I think Trice is the next guy in that line. I think Trice is really going to take a step forward as kind of this late shot clock shot maker. So I think he's my choice. I think a lot like Koenig, he's going to have his hot nights and cold nights. How are you feeling about the second best player situation?
I like what you're saying about Trice because, he has shown, I think he really gained a lot from learning under Koenig last season and kind of learning what it takes to be the point guard of the Badgers because, Ethan Happ may be the best player, but I think Trice has the most responsibility on the team, getting everyone getting into the offense, making sure the ball's distributed, but also making sure that you're ready to go at a minute's notice if you got to make a big shot. And he's shooting 46% from three. I understand it's only 3 games in, and he's averaging less than one turnover a game, a little over 3 assists. And, he seems like he's fitting into that role really well. And especially against Xavier, who has really good guards, I think he played pretty well last night. Played 35 minutes, the most of anyone on the team. Only had 9 points. But as long as he's getting everyone into it and not forcing shots, because I think that was one thing Bronson kind of did a little bit. When he wasn't feeling it, he would have the Kyle Korver syndrome and just shoot until he started making it, which is good in some facets, but it can kind of be a run killer also.
Yeah.
But
it's one of those guys where you say that he can shoot you into games and he can shoot you out of games.
yeah.
But I think that's kind of Wisconsin's offense is that when it gets bogged down, they need somebody who can do that, which is maybe more of a statement about the talent they have than anything else.
Yeah. I guess moving on to our next thing we wanted to get to, who would you say is the Badgers' surprise player so far?
In terms of surprising me, I would have to say it's Brad Davison. Compared to a lot of Badger fans, I had really high expectations for Brad Davison. I saw him play AAU in high school ball maybe like 10 times or something like that. So I had, a pretty high baseline for him. And even that, his ability to transition and into this college game and play college basketball at a high level is really impressive because it's totally different than playing AAU in high school ball where you're bigger and stronger than everybody and just a better athlete. he's not that here. He's not some exceptional athlete that really stands out. He's good, but he's not fantastic. And the fact that he's been able to contribute and he played so many minutes last night and really helped Wisconsin stay in this game, it's impressed me.
Yeah, I think Davison's a good choice for that. There were very high expectations as he's kind of the was the top guy in this recruiting class along with Kobe King. But I'm gonna stay a little unconventional for most surprising. I'm gonna have to go with Aleem Ford. I think he's gonna be a really important player when it comes down to it next year and for years to come for Wisconsin. He's really long. He's a long 6'8". He's super athletic, can jump out of the gym. And you saw yesterday in 29 minutes, he hit 2 threes. So it's a part of his game that's developing. As I said before, he redshirted last year to kind of get strength and everything. And it was said in the off season in an interview, I think, with Coach Gard, that Aleem Ford last year in the redshirt role on the scout team, he played the opponent's best player. He mimicked them to kind of get the feeling of what it is to have not great defenders, but top tier defenders going at you every day in practice. And I think it really showed like that he can fill in that role. And I honestly think he's going to be a starter before the end of the season because I think they really lack a perimeter defender that can really just get down and defend. I mean, did have 4 fouls, so I mean, he was being aggressive and whatnot, but I think his length is something that this lineup desperately needs. And I think another guy that I would kind of fit in that is Van Vliet. I mean, in his first 2 games.
Okay, can I stop you for a second? It is pronounced Van Vliet. I'm just, yeah. So I just wanted to get that in there, but go ahead.
No problem. I know I had a tough time spelling it too.
It's the spelling of it is even more confusing than the pronunciation, in my opinion. But
all right, so I guess the second guy that I could think for the surprising role is Van Vliet. Only played 11 minutes yesterday, but in the 2 games previous, he really filled it up offensively. Shot the ball extremely well, used his length to kind of outman some lackluster opponents, but when he's hitting his shots and because when Hap gets the ball in the high post, I look at him and I see you got to have shooters around him. So Van Vliet, when he's out there, a lot of teams will be like, oh, he's just going to shoot the 3. But he showed us in the first couple games that a shot fake or a hesitation and one dribble, he can use his length to shoot over defenders. And I think he's, sneaky athletic at that point. But like I said, didn't play a lot yesterday, so I'm kind of hesitant to put him there.
I guess if I can just touch on both of those guys, Aleem Ford was 2 of 4 from 3 yesterday, but his 2 misses, they were in and out. Both of them were halfway down in the cylinder. He looks to just be a really pure shooter, and to have that from really a guy who's 6'8" and as athletic as him, if he can shoot that well, it's going to be a huge boon for this team. I'm a little worried about Andy Van Vliet's physicality for a guy his size. It's great to have guys who can play on the perimeter, but you would like him to be able to give the Badgers a little more height down low at times when Hap is out of the game. But right now he's seemingly playing more of a stretch 4 type role despite being several inches taller than Hap. It'll be interesting to see kind of how he develops. I believe he played either pro or semi-pro ball in Belgium before he came here. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how that experience translates to the Division I level.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with you on the physicality because with teams that have numerous bigs like Purdue, for example, in the conference, like you're going to need – like that's a game where you need him to be physical and you need him to go get rebounds, especially in the starting role if he's still there at that point. Right. So stemming off of that, 2-1, beat 2 cupcakes, lose to a quality opponent. What are your early expectations for the Badgers this year?
One note, I don't necessarily think that Yale is a huge cupcake by any means. I think that they're going to have a pretty good season this year. I know the Ivy League isn't the Big East or the Big Ten, but it's a competitive conference that has produced, this is a Yale team that beat Baylor in the tournament 2 years ago. They have a lot of guys on the team from that year still. So I just think that's kind of evidence of Barry Alvarez really getting good non-conference opponents in for us. But my expectations for this team are pretty high. A lot of people expect it to be kind of a down year, and they think this is the year that the Wisconsin's top four in the Big Ten streak gets broken. I don't remember the Badgers ever not finishing top four in the Big Ten because I'm 22 and they haven't done it since I was 7 or something like that. So I expect them to be, top four in the Big Ten. I don't know if they win it this year. I've watched, I think, 2 Purdue games and 2 Michigan State games, and those are just really good teams. And I think they're both well coached and they have a lot of talent. But I think they can be right in there for 3rd, 4th best team in the conference. And I think this is a team that can get maybe a 5 or a 6 seed and win a couple of tournament games.
And it seems, I understand that the talent's not all there right now, but the Badgers have always been a sneaky team in the tournament time, and they just dominate teams with their patience and their fundamentals because a lot of when the big stage hits, a lot of these guys try to play outside of themselves on other teams, and it seems like Wisconsin's system is really what keeps them humble in these games.
I don't know what it is about Greg Gard, but I believe he is undefeated on the second game of NCAA tournament weekends. I know it's only a 2-year sample, but the fact that you're able to take a team that wins on Thursday or Friday and then get them ready to face, he's knocked off a 2 seed and a 1 seed in his first 2 years as head coach. I don't know if that's ever, it's probably been done before because of how long the tournament's been around, but that's really impressive from my perspective that he's been able to do that.
No, for sure. My expectations are pretty similar to yours. I think the hierarchy in the Big Ten has, the couple teams have switched spots. Purdue's kind of back. And then, Minnesota's a pretty decent team. They got a lot of athletes over there. And, Northwestern, they lost the other day, but they're still a pretty good program. But I think we'll take care of them, no problem. So I agree with you, probably 3 or 4. I think Michigan State and Purdue, like you said, are just a little bit above us, to be honest with you, just because of their leadership. Miles Bridges is unbelievable. Just he showed it in the Champions Classic against Duke. He's a really good player, and so I think maybe 5 or 6 is, I'd say maybe just a touch too high. I'd say maybe 7 or 8, but I could be wrong. It really depends if they just beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. Don't get lackluster and don't get lazy against Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, teams like that, teams you should theoretically beat.
Yeah. I your choices for that were pretty nice considering Rutgers is around, but
no, that's true.
We don't have to rip Rutgers on every time we talk about the Big Ten.
Yeah, we got Jonathan Taylor from them, so it's all right.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, it'll be a really interesting season, and we're gonna. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but next year we should be even better. The only thing that would, in theory, make us worse for next year is if Ethan Happ has such a good season this year that he is able to get drafted, which, unlike a lot of teams, I don't think we have to worry about our best player getting drafted if he overperforms as much, just because of how his game is dominant in the college level, but maybe not suited for the pros.
Yeah, especially with the up and down and kind of, I mean, not that he can't play up and down, but I'm just saying scoring the ball. Plus, he's not even, and he's not like an elite athlete like how DeAndre Jordan plays the game or similar players. I guess that'd be a kind of the one similar guy, not athletically, but the style of how he plays to Happ.
Yeah. If DeAndre Jordan had Ethan Happ's post skills, though, he'd be the best player. He'd be one of the best players in the league.
that would be very scary. And you're right. I think Happ kind of wants to make his own legacy at Wisconsin also. I I can't say that for sure because I haven't talked to him or anything. But you know, being in the shadow of Kaminsky and Koenig and Hayes, this is his team, and it will be for the next 2 years. So however far the team goes, that's on him.
Yeah, maybe that's why Tyler Harrow didn't want to come here. He didn't want to be in Hap's shadow.
Yeah, it's all right. He can go ride the pine or whatever he wants to do. That's his prerogative, I suppose.
Yeah,
All right. Well, awesome. We're going to be doing a Marquette one shortly to preview kind of Marquette season and where they are at part of the season. We'll be doing bi-weekly updates of the Badgers, so you can hit us up on iTunes. Just search Cream City Cast. Always on creamcitycentral.com. You can check out me and Alex. Our writing on there. You can check out our other cool stuff. We got great Bucks writers, great Badger football writers, Packers, all that good stuff. Anything you'd like to say to the fans?
check out Cream City Central this Tuesday at noon. I'm gonna have a piece going up where I compare current Bucks players to NBA or not NBA, NBC's hit sitcom, The Office characters. So that's a really fun piece I've been working on. I'm having fun with it.
That sounds good. Yeah, so check it out. You said Tuesday at noon?
Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Please subscribe, share to your friends, and on Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.